Everywhere I go, I see speculation that Phase 5 of the MCU will return the franchise to its former glory. And now that the first movie of Phase 5 has released a new trailer, you can see people slowly starting to get sucked back in. But are they all being fooled is the real question. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Now, anybody who's been watching me for some time knows that I've been checked out of the MCU for a while now. In fact, you would probably have to go all the way back to Phase 2 to find a movie in this franchise that I was genuinely excited about. Listen, I typically give the MCU a lot of shit, and rightfully so. Our content sucks. Our content sucks. But there was a time, believe it or not, where I was just as caught up in the hype as everyone else. And then Age of Ultron happened, which I've long said is the breaking point in my MCU experience. It was at that moment, as I sat there and watched that movie in the theater, that I became familiar with the Marvel formula and realized that we would be getting the same shit over and over again in the MCU.
You didn't see that coming.
And with every single movie that came out after that one, my theory proved to be more and more true. Then we got to the point before I had a YouTube channel where I just checked out altogether. I just stopped going to see these movies because I had very little interest in them. And during my time away from the MCU is when the first two Ant-Man movies came out. So full transparency, I've never actually seen those two movies, nor do I have a real desire to.
Fuck me, right?
Even when I was a big Marvel fan, I never really cared much for the character of Ant-Man. And I've long been of the opinion that Ant-Man is the type of character who really doesn't need his own movie. But we are in this age that if a character has ever appeared in a comic book, they will most likely get their own movie at some point to maximize profits for Disney and Marvel Studios. So I have come to terms with that. As for the MCU as a whole, I was very pleased to see that post Phase 4, that a lot of people were finally catching up to what I've been saying now for years. That the MCU has become a shell of its former self.
Jesus fucking Christ, it's about time!
And I really thought that Phase 4 would be that turning point, where superhero fatigue finally sets in for everyone in the way that it's set in for me. But it appears that if they still dangle those keys, people will still come running. And I don't mean to sound like I'm disrespecting everyone who still finds enjoyment in these movies, because I'm really not. But if you want the truth, another reason why I initially checked out of the MCU was because of the fandom. Many of whom have this all or nothing mentality when it comes to these movies. And if you happen to be one of those people who doesn't heap unconditional praise on these movies, you will most likely be verbally attacked for it.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
From my perspective, MCU movies have never been perfect. They've always had flaws. But they do have crowd-pleasing moments that get people excited, and that's enough for some people, and that's fine. But that's not enough for me personally. That's never going to be enough. And that brings me to the Antman and the Wasp Quantumania trailer. Did this trailer do anything to change my mind moving forward about the MCU? The answer is no.
Absolutely fucking not.
The trailer was fine for what it is, like most of their trailers, but until they prove otherwise, I'm going to have to go into this movie assuming that it's just going to be more of the same. You see, I've been in this situation many times before. When it feels like I'm about to watch this high-stakes blockbuster, like Avengers Endgame for instance. How that movie starts on a very serious and dire note, as it should given the ending of Infinity War, but it quickly devolves into your typical MCU bullshit, using comedy to break tension, rather than letting dramatic moments breathe and resonate with people, using cameos and Easter eggs to manipulate people into having some kind of emotional reaction. Overusage of CGI, or more specifically, very poor CGI, tells me that they have no attention to detail. One-dimensional characters, convenient and lazy plot points, the list goes on and on. When I'm watching an MCU movie, they typically feel as shallow as they actually are.
Whoopie fucking do. Hey, I'm impressed.
So I can't allow myself to be fooled by this trailer into thinking that they are finally going to be taking things seriously again. If this movie ends up being the type of movie that the trailer is suggesting that it is, then that is a step in the right direction. But I'm not going to hold my breath waiting for that to happen. All the conversation seems to be directed at two key things coming out of this trailer. That being Jonathan Majors' portrayal of Kang, and whether or not Ant-Man will die. I'll start with Ant-Man because to me that's the easiest to unpack. If I had to bet, he probably will die in this movie for two reasons.
If he dies, he dies.
For one, they seem to want to phase the original Avengers out, and Ant-Man and Thor are basically the last two standing, and they typically do this just so they can replace them with a shittier version of the character. And don't tell me that's not a real possibility because it's been done countless times recently. The other part to this is that killing a character is the easiest way to incite an emotional reaction out of your audience from a storytelling perspective. And I think the MCU has leaned on that a lot since Endgame. All I'm saying is if you're going to kill a character off, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons.
That makes sense.
And as for Jonathan Majors as Kang, he's a talented actor. I'm very much looking forward to seeing him in Creed 3 later this year. But let me ask you this. When is the last time that the MCU properly utilized a great actor? We are still just a couple of movies removed from the Christian Bale debacle in Thor: Love and Thunder. Granted, that happened because of the incompetence of Taika Waititi, but I'll take it a step further. When is the last time that the MCU had a memorable or iconic villain? Loki maybe? Killmonger? Some may argue Thanos, but I think he was a bit overrated, especially after they undid a lot of his character development in Endgame, all for the sake of having him be yet another one-note villain for that finale. So I find it a little bit hard to believe that the MCU is just suddenly going to solve their villain problem with Kang. Could Jonathan Majors overcome bad writing and give us a solid performance? And actually elevate the material with his talents? Sure, but will Marvel Studios allow that to happen? Or will Majors just be treated as another cog in the MCU machine? There's a lot to think about here, and some may call this take negative. I say that I'm just doing what I do best and being realistic about this situation. I say it all the time on here. Track record is everything. And it's up to Marvel Studios to show me that they've learned from their past mistakes and are ready to let filmmakers and actors do their job. Because to me, that's how you're going to restore faith in your brand. What route did they take in Phase 5? I don't know, but I guess we'll find out in June.
Y'all be cool. Right on.